Okay, here we are, tape number 8, and I think it's the final tape. 8 is a good number. Which has been a series of tapes, me, Grandad Goose, talking to his grandchildren, um, particularly when they're grown up, and I've chance to kind of see these tapes and yeah, understand things more. Okay, this tape covers the time from us returning from Bermuda and going to South Africa and what happened in South Africa, and ultimately what happened towards the end of our time in South Africa. Okay, so I'm going to go through that. I need to kind of just say two reasons quickly why we went to South Africa. Uh, my daughters Emma and Ruby will freak out about this. Um, Essentially, I wanted to have a kind of life where the UK is paradise. I promise you, it's paradise. Yeah, it's relatively safe. Um, People are fairly well off. We have a government which takes care of our education, healthcare. Well, not housing, but a lot of things. Yeah. Um, and life here, despite its difficulties, can be rather, you know, well, it's easy and it's nice, but it can lack a bit of excitement sometimes. Okay, not that excitement's always a good thing. And I had this kind of yearning. I wanted to not have excitement so much. I wanted to see history happening. Um, I've always had a big interest in history, and I wanted to experience at first hand how big changes felt, how they happened. Because I knew intuitively it wasn't like in the history books, and it isn't. Total bollocks, yeah. Um, Journalism. The say that journalism is the first draft of history. I mean, a lot of truth in that. What I wanted to experience is that first-hand experience of how things were and how change happened. That sounds a bit abstract, but it wasn't. It was just a genuine interest I had. So that was one thing. And the second thing was I did not want to get stuck, and I knew it would happen. I didn't want to get stuck in a seedy little council house somewhere on the Seacroft estate in Leeds, living hand to mouth for years and years until we managed to get some kind of decent life together. Because my daughters won't understand that, but that was our prospect at the time. Certainly if I stayed in nursing, work in healthcare, yeah. So we set off to South Africa and we arrived there, all four of us, Lynn, Emma, Ruby, me, and we arrived there in December 1985. I spent a year working in a farm school for disabled children, and then I transferred to the Tara Hospital in near Randburg in Johannesburg. I spent most of my time working there, and towards the end of the time, I was self-employed as well. Yeah. Okay, so that's what happened. Just the kind of the big story. Yeah. So I need to explain. Check out a picture by, I don't know, something like Gauguin, and compare it to kind of paintings that were happening in England at the time. Yeah, like even Van Gogh, somebody who used vivid colour, was able to express the feeling of life in his art. Yeah, and then compare it to these kind of half-dead paintings that artists in the UK were producing. Yeah, that's a very flowery way of saying South Africa was a vivid, super vivid experience. It wasn't the kind of semi-somnolent, half asleep kind of world that the UK can often be like. And I was craving that, and I wanted to do a lot of travelling. Um, See, I had this idea. So here's a globe. I have a nice one. It's very old. I wanted to see most of this, spin it round in a dramatic way. I wanted to see most of that. I couldn't really see why I couldn't both have a family on one hand, don't laugh, okay, have a family on one hand, and do all these vivid, dramatic, exciting, adventurous things on the other. Okay? I know, you know. But that was my idea. And true to form, I did lots of things. I had lots of opportunities. I did lots of things. Most of all, I saw so much. You know, if I'd have stayed in the UK, I would have had 1/20th of the life experience. So many people in the UK find it very hard to imagine societies which are much different from their own. Okay, Europe and America we can get an idea of, but they find it very hard to understand Latin America or Africa or parts of Asia, yeah? And it was a kind of blindness to it, you know, you just don't get it. They might talk as if they do, but they really don't get it. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to experience those vivid things, yeah? And long story short, in the 11 years or so we spent in South Africa, I had an incredible list of experiences. Yeah, I've written out most of this stuff down in various booklets I've made for you, various books. I won't go into detail, but I got to do stuff which I wouldn't have got in 100 lifetimes in the UK. But you kids, so your parents, obviously your mums, Ruby and Emma, see, they will be furious when I say this, and I can see them screaming at me now. I would say the life experience, good and bad, they got in South Africa and to a degree Bermuda, has made them better people. I could hear the screams now and the shouts and the anger. I'm not saying it was all good, and I'm not saying some of it wasn't damaging. It certainly was. I do get that. But they've grown up with an idea, or sorry, an appreciation that the world isn't just the UK. All right? And I hope also they've grown up with a curiosity, wanting to know what other places are like, and not just seeking out comfort and kind of, pleasure, which is, pointless really at the end of the day. Well, it's not pointless, but it's not. There's more to it there's more to life than those things. Okay, so I believe there's a very mixture of influences, but I would still argue that some of what happened made them better people. But there was difficulties, and I've got to talk about there's tragedies. I've got to talk about what happened to Lynn, my wife, about halfway through our time in South Africa. So here we're talking about the late 1980s. For a number of years, and it wasn't just all of a sudden, for a number of years, she'd been having severe headaches and uncontrolled movements. And we've been to lots of doctors who were basically saying it was psychological or, she was histrionic in some way or whatever, yeah? And, we seemed to be getting nowhere at all. And, and then it got much worse. And the movements became quite violent, kind of kicking movements and so on. They were a form of seizure, and that became clear, I think called myoclonic seizures, yeah? And I got very worried. And I spoke to a friend, Dr. Kupovitz, who was a psychiatrist. He saw Lynn quickly and then referred her on to a neurologist who did some investigations, MRI scans especially, and it showed a very clear, obvious aneurysm, which was either leaking or about to burst. It was very unstable, yeah? Now, if you imagine a brain, I've got quite a nice one here. There's a crown. We'll start with a circle of arteries and veins that goes around the brain, and then they form a kind of a network that kind of links up. And this circle of blood vessels is called the circle of Willis, yeah? And the aneurysm that Lynn had was at the front of the circle of Willis. Now, imagine a bicycle tyre that's got, the inner tube starts ballooning out and swelling up and getting bigger. It's like a balloon essentially. An aneurysm is a weakening of the blood vessels kind of wall, and it balloons out, and it leaks or it bursts, and it can cause sudden death. It can cause brain damage. You know. So once we saw that, we were told you had to have immediate surgery, and most neurosurgeons wouldn't do the operation because, quite frankly, they said there was a very good chance she would die during the operation. Eventually, there was one surgeon who came highly recommended who said he would do it, but he sat me and Lynn down and very clearly said, when you'll have a 1 in 2 chance of surviving this operation, and if you do survive, you will have some impairments, you will have some damage as a consequence of the surgery and what's been happening in the brain. He was very truthful about it, yeah. And yeah, he went ahead with a surgery, and yeah, that was in late 1980s. I felt that maybe, that the hospital system there, I mean, post-operation, wasn't giving her enough help. So for that reason and a few others, we came back to Britain. It was the Isle of Man in 1991. You could have treatment at a neurological hospital in Liverpool, which I thought, UK, wonderful, it'd be fantastic. It was rubbish, okay? And the consultant treating her was very cynical and dismissive of her problems, yeah? The net result was we didn't gain much at all from coming back to the UK as regards Lynn's health. And yeah, the symptoms did gradually settle down over the course of about a year. So we returned to South Africa towards the end of 1991, I think it was. My brother Neil died that same year, yeah. Okay, and yeah, we returned to South Africa, and I carried on working at the hospital. I also did kind of private practice work, and I did training. I did all kinds of. I did hospital work. I did paid work doing training at various bodies, universities, and I did counselling work with families independently as well. Yeah. But it was a case of diminishing returns. I was. The country was changing rapidly. It had changed rapidly in 1993, was it? Yeah, back then. But pay for hospital staff became worthless. The wage I was getting at Tara, where I worked for the first years, became impossible to kind of keep a family on. And most of the work I did privately was through the schools and with children. Most, not all. And it all came to a head in early December 1995. We had to leave the country urgently because it was a big summer holidays coming up in South Africa. I'm getting no work for 8 weeks from school, and I was working nights in the neurosurgical hospital, and that wasn't enough to keep us either. Yeah. So over the course of one weekend almost. Well, a few days more than that, but the intense bit was over one weekend, and we returned to the UK. I put all we owned in the car, well, not all of it, but what we could take. I drove the car to what was then called Jan Smuts Airport. It's now Oliver Tambo Airport. I abandoned the car in the car park. We caught an aeroplane, and we returned to England. And we settled in a town called Dis, eventually, where I got a job working in the hospital here, yeah. Okay, so Emma and Ruby, after all these years of living abroad, were suddenly kind of plonked down in a market town in Norfolk. I remember them feeling frozen cold, even though it was December, so that's likely. And I think it was more than a shock to the system, quite a difficult, I know it was a difficult time for them, yeah. Me and Lynn stayed together for 8 years after she had the surgery. Your mums will talk to you about this, but it became apparent that I couldn't do both things. I couldn't take care of Lynn and the children. There had been various personality changes after the surgery, and it was impossible to have all of us in the same house at the same time. Uh, she was just too volatile and too, distressed all the time. Yeah. So I gave her then an amount of money, and she moved into another house, and we separated and ultimately divorced. Yeah. And obviously it goes with that. Okay. Awfully sad. Awfully sad. I don't want to kind of. It's a tragedy, absolute tragedy. I know it is. I don't want to end on that, okay? Because it's the last tape, isn't it? Yeah. I hope these tapes can help you. You see, I've taken it as far as when Emma and Ruby became an age where they could understand more and remember more what was going on. So at this time, we were in their mid and late teens by 1995, 96. So they can pick up on the rest of the stories, yeah? There's always stories, isn't there? I've written tons in books as well about this and everything else, yeah? Tons of stuff. It's been a great life, in all sorts, ups and downs, though. All right. Okay, so this is a series of films. I hope when you're old enough, you can take out some time to watch these. It might help you kind of get a first-hand account of my parents and of my brothers and the kind of family background that you come from. All right. Okay, I'm going to sign off now. I hope I do this right because I end up making a mess. Okay, take care. Yeah, be good. Be the best person you can, know that.